just about finished doing my journal binding lesson for journaling Crazy Island style this year, but as I was dyeing some of the fabrics that I'm going to use in that journal, the spray over on this scratch paper just spoke to me. So I ripped it all up because it was already breaking apart with all the moisture, and just tore it into a bunch of pieces and collaged them all down. Now, parts of this video are missing because I used up my memory card, because the journal lesson is a huge big lesson and will be a course on its own. And so there are a few parts of this that are missing before I realised that it wasn't doing anything. So this is just essentially a little bit of eye candy, and honestly, it's a reasonably in-depth look at one of the way that I shade faces, and this is for Whimsy Girls. I just sketched a couple of girls. This is somewhere where it didn't. So essentially, after I did that last step, I just got some matte medium, went over the top of it, and then I decided into the wet paint and everything that I would just put some acrylic ink. So I used turquoise, blue and violet. And then after I had done that and sprayed them around a little bit and reactivated that wet matte medium, I then started scraping with a palette knife in various directions, and it gave me some awesome texture. And this is very quickly becoming like a snow scene. So I kind of decided that I would do a snow scene. And even though it's summer here in Australia at the moment, kind of. So I then decided that I was going to get out my super heavy gesso and have some fun with some stencils. I haven't used my stencils an awful lot lately, but I really wanted to. And I did this when the below mixture that I just finished doing was still just that little bit wet, and that helped the stencil to really stick down on this, because essentially it didn't matter whether it stuck a little bit or not. And I just put, and this is almost like a modelling paste when you use super heavy gesso in this way. It's like a modelling paste, and just caution you, you must wash your stencils afterwards. You really should. So I just scraped out a little bit where it had bled a little bit, and then decided to blend it into the rest of the page, so it kind of looked like it transitioned from the really pretty stuff into the darker stuff. You know, the very sharply defined stencil pattern. I love this brick stencil from Kaisercraft. It's really good, strong stencil thickness, and wears up to this kind of mixed media stuff. So then I started just thinking, what does a snowstorm look like? So started using my palette knife to just blend the edges of bricks. This is a paint and sculpt tool, so it's got a silicone end on it with a wedge, and as you can see, I'm using and moving that gesso around quite easily because it's not dry yet. And I'm gouging out like I did, but I have a lot more control because of the palette knife. This is the wedge tip, and they are a great lot of tips. So now I'm using one of my acrylic inks sprays, and this dries permanent, so it's not a Delusion spray. It's black India ink actually, and that dries permanent. This is one of the little girls that I've been sketching. I just looked at one of Tam's videos and thought, oh, she had a cute face, and I drew a couple of girls, and they don't really look so much like hers except for the hair, but I did my hair very different. And now I'm just going to show you where I go from here. So I'm using Santa's Flesh and Deco Art. These paints are very, very matte, and I got them from Jane Davenport's store, but if you're in America, you can get them anywhere. And if you're in the Deco Art artist program, well, then you can get them, but they're very, very matte, and they're easy to draw on top of, sketch on top of. So I'm using some white paint here just to redefine those highlights. And there's quite a lot of layers in this face, and this segment goes for quite a bit, and this forms the major part of the lesson really, because you can just have a look and see that I've got the light coming front on, definitely front on. There's no excess shadows. The shadows are equal on every side, and she has a little bit of a, you know, that concave face. So at the moment I'm doing my underpaintings, and I'm using a violet mixed with white, and I'm just putting some shading in under the eyes, in those deep areas under the eye sockets. And I'm not doing a lot around the nose because I don't want to make a big feature of the nose. I'm also doing the neck, and instead of just doing one part of the neck, I'm doing both parts of the neck, because I'm showing that she has like a cylindrical neck, and that's the look that I'm going for. There's no different kind of light source. The only thing I didn't do here is blend in that right eye shading as well as the left, and I spend a lot of my time after this fixing it up. So I'm going back to that Santa's flesh, because it's quite a good strong colour, and you'll just see the highlight, the, you know, the deepening of the shadows after that. But of course that right eye is really sticking out, and so I need to work a lot more with the blocky nature of that and just put some more in. And I'm still just using this Santa's flesh. I'm just building up a few layers. My shadows are already in, and I really, now I'm working on that one shadow, and I'm really kind of working in those whole areas, going back to my white, going back to the Santa's flesh, using a little bit of cream, using some white again, putting some highlights in, just redefining those, because if you don't keep those areas clean, then the white doesn't look white, and they look a little bit like muddy water. So again, I'm going in with the Santa's flesh. It is the one tone at this point, but because of all the underpainting, it doesn't look like the one tone. And this is where you not only blend your shadows in so that they show through. So that violet is such a strong colour that it's showing through. But it does blend very well with the Santa's flesh, I must admit. So now I'm going to do the lips, and I'm just using like a Crayola marker, and I'm also using a pale pink Tombow that I use for cheeks a lot when I'm doing flesh tones. So I'm just blending that. You can see it blends incredibly well, and you get a lovely transition there for her lips. I wanted her lips to be ruby red because the rest of her is reasonably pale, and they stand out. So as I apply the white paint at this point with a little scrubby brush, that will sort of, the marker will bleed into it as it dries. And now I'm just redoing those white parts again, and just, if you think that the little fulcrum under our nose, that will actually catch the light here, not get too much shadows. So I'm making shadows on the other parts. Now I'm using my own flesh tint glaze, and I do have a Technique Friday that shows you how to make those and what to use. But at this point, where I'm essentially wanting very delicate paint, I'm not wanting to block out anything more. I'm wanting to gradually layer and create depth. This glaze is transparent, so it's the flesh tone, but it's transparent, and so I can even go over the white without really masking the white all that much. And I just keep layering this until I'm happy with that overall effect of the glaze. And I go in and I critically have a look at different parts of the face, pop them in, just make sure that I don't make the marker run. And just redefining some of the cute little features of the face. And just popping in those eyebrows. And now I'm going to get a violet pencil. Oh, I'm going to do the eyes, sorry. I'm not going to get a violet pencil at all. So I'm just using a fine marker just to put in her pupils. And I'm leaving the white patches white. It helps to give depth when you just put your white over the top. And now I'm just sketchily, gently going in around the eyes and defining the eyes. I don't want them over made up. I make a little error there. That gets sorted later. Just redefining some dark points. So now I'm going to do the eyes. I'm going to use a medium blue Crayola marker, and then I'm going to use a Letraset marker in a very pale blue, just to blend those together before they completely dry on the page, and to give some depth to those eyes. So you can see those eyes now don't look completely blocked out. I wouldn't recommend that you use pencil over them until they're completely dry, by the way. Now I'm just again using my white Signo to just go in and redefine some of the highlights. And I don't do all of them, I just do some of them, because that then creates depth. And you know, on top of this paint you can smudge your Signo before it dries, but you don't have a lot of time to do that. So now I've got the violet pencil, and this just gives a really soft shading, and because I've used the Deco Art paints underneath, they've given a certain kind of grittiness, even with the glazes over the top. And you use a very, very light touch, and just, you can see me smudging them. You can smudge pencils on top of acrylic paint, and that's something that you can take away. If you take away nothing else from this lesson, understand that if you apply them lightly and you're not pressing heavily into the paper, that anywhere where you've got acrylic paint, your pencils will smudge, and you can move them around with paint as well. So now I'm just defining with a grey pencil some features, just gently, not heavily, just really gently, really light pressure, really light shadows. And this is where my memory card fell out. So what I used for the hair, just quickly, is I used lemonade, which is a pale lemon distress paint, and then I used a Flow Sheer Australian Sienna over the top of that, just to blend, and that's very much like the Nicolazo Gold in the golden. And I just used a very light dry brush for that, and then I just used over the top of that, after I'd gotten the light and the shade into the hair, I had then just used a white Signo pen to add some further highlights in. Now, I'm not completely in love with this dress, and I do, you know, like, I'm sorry you missed me painting that. I've done it in a purple. I wanted her to look a little bit like a snow bunny, and I think I've kind of achieved that, but not really. I don't know. I'm happy with her, but not happy with her. I really love her face and her hair, but that's kind of where it ends. I'm not really that enamoured of the body, but I think with the violet and the blues in the background and the white, that she will then really fit into the background a little bit better than what she looks on her own. And she's a real contrast, and with backgrounds like this, it's always better to do your face or your girl or elements that you've drawn, and don't try and draw them on top of, collage them down, draw them somewhere else and collage them down. I've decided I'm going to do a writing block here to join the two pages together, so I'm just whiting out with a little bit of white paint, not gesso, because this one dries matte, a surface that I can journal on later on with my food ball pen. And I'm just going to glue her on. I'm going to use glue. You could use matte medium, but I wanted the fine point of the glue because I literally just wanted to press and stick. And I did smooth her down a little bit, but not a lot, because of that heavy gesso in the background there. And she's going over a bubbly kind of surface. And I have used a 180 GSM watercolor paper for that girl, which is why I could just throw a lot of wet media at it and keep doing it and doing it and doing it. But as we're here, you can see me just adding in a few other little white highlights while she's drying. It's such good paper that it's not bubbling at all, and the glue is not making it bubble. And I'm just redefining some areas to my satisfaction, to make them stand out as much as I want them to stand out, and to add in areas. I think this is where you see me add the highlights to her hair. And I like the way that her hair's turned out. It's really quite rolling and pretty. And I've wanting that to dry, I'm going to use a food ball pen, roller pen over the top of this because of the uneven surface of it. And we're right near the end of it now. So again, my memory card ran out. Duh. So I'm essentially saying here, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, and this one day I'm going to get there. At Christmas time, in the snow, I'm going to get there, and it's on my bucket list, and that's